Argentina has defaulted on its debt 9 times. Some say 10, depending on how you count the negotiations. Each time, the same story plays out like a national ritual. Crisis, bailout, recovery, denial, and collapse again. If debt were an Olympic sport, Argentina would be a permanent gold medalist. The only mystery left is not whether it will default, but when. This is the financial historian, where money, power, and history collide. And nothing is ever as simple as it looks. But this isn't just about one country. Argentina's story is a warning to the world, a mirror held up to what happens when a nation turns economics into politics and politics into theater. When money becomes a tool of power instead of a measure of value, collapse isn't a question of if, but when. And for Argentina, that moment keeps coming back again and again and again. To understand why, we need to go back to the beginning of the 20th century when Argentina wasn't a cautionary tale. It was a dream. In 1913, Argentina was one of the 10 richest countries on Earth. Its GDP per capita rivaled France and Germany. Its ports overflowed with wheat, beef, and wool feeding the industrial world. Buenos Aires was called the Paris of South America, a skyline of marble, opera houses, and electric trams. The peso was backed by gold. British investors built railroads that crisscrossed the pampas, and European immigrants flooded in chasing opportunity. For a moment, Argentina looked destined to become the first truly global power of the Southern Hemisphere. But prosperity can be its own undoing. When the Great Depression struck in 1929, Argentina's dependence on exports became its vulnerability. As global demand collapsed, the economy imploded, foreign capital fled, unemployment soared, and the country's first modern coup toppled the government in 1930. From that moment on, Argentina entered a new kind of cycle, not one of growth and reform, but of instability and improvisation. Coup replaced elections. Short-term fixes replaced long-term vision. The era of economic populism had begun. By the 1940s, a new figure emerged who would shape Argentina's destiny for generations: Juan Domingo Perón. He promised dignity for workers, justice for the poor, and prosperity for all. He delivered for a while. Wages rose, factories opened, and Argentina looked alive again. But behind the prosperity was the same trap every populist eventually falls into: spending more than the nation could afford. Perón nationalized industries, raised subsidies, and turned the printing press into a political weapon. The economy became dependent on charisma instead of productivity. When the money ran out, he borrowed more. The Peronist model, part socialism, part nationalism, part personality cult, would dominate Argentina's politics for the next 80 years. It wasn't just an ideology, it was an addiction. Governments learned to buy peace by borrowing from the future. When times were good, they printed money to celebrate. When times were bad, they printed more to survive, and each time the currency suffered. In the 1950s and 60s, inflation became a way of life. Prices rose faster than wages. Citizens hoarded US dollars in shoeboxes and mattresses, creating a parallel economy that would later be known as the blue dollar market. Each administration promised to fix inflation. None ever did. Instead, they rebranded the same habit: controlling prices, raising subsidies, and borrowing more to cover the gap. By the 1970s, Argentina's political volatility turned deadly. Military coups replaced civilian governments. Generals replaced economists. Each regime borrowed heavily from foreign creditors, insisting growth was just around the corner. But the debt never built factories, and it built illusions. Between 1976 and 1983, Argentina's foreign debt ballooned from $8 billion to $45 billion. Meanwhile, inflation devoured savings and corruption devoured trust. Then came the reckoning. In 1982, as Latin America plunged into its debt crisis, Argentina defaulted, its first major collapse of the modern era. The International Monetary Fund stepped in with loans and conditions, marking the beginning of a long, uneasy marriage between Argentina and global finance. The same institution that had once symbolized independence was now dependent on foreign oversight to stay solvent. By the late 1980s, the peso had become a punchline. Hyperinflation hit 3,000% per year. Prices doubled weekly. Workers were paid in cash and rushed to grocery stores before their wages evaporated by nightfall. Middle-class families who had once lived comfortably were selling possessions to afford bread. Economically, the country was disintegrating. Socially, it was exhausted. In 1991, Argentina tried something radical, the convertibility plan. The new policy pegged the peso 1.1 with the US dollar. It was simple, seductive, and for a time, miraculous. Inflation vanished overnight. Foreign investment returned. Creditors believed again. Argentina became once more the model student of neoliberal reform. Shopping malls opened, foreign cars filled the streets, and the peso felt strong because it was pretending to be the dollar. But a fixed exchange rate is a trap disguised as stability. As imports surged and exports stagnated, Argentina's trade deficit widened. The government couldn't print dollars, so it borrowed them. The illusion of prosperity rested entirely on access to foreign credit. When global conditions changed, the system cracked. In 2001, it finally broke. The country defaulted on $132 billion in sovereign debt, the largest default in world history at the time. Banks froze withdrawals. Millions lost savings. Riots filled the streets. Within weeks, 5 presidents came and went. Poverty doubled. The middle class collapsed. It was the moment when Argentina's century-long dream of prosperity finally expired. But even that wasn't the end, just another reset. Within 4 years, a partial recovery began. Powered by a commodity boom and another round of optimism, governments promised this time would be different. They nationalized pensions, manipulated inflation data, and borrowed again, only to stumble back into crisis by 2014. Another default, another IMF deal, another wave of promises. By 2020, after nearly 2 decades of stopgap recoveries, Argentina was once again negotiating with creditors to restructure tens of billions in debt. In Argentina today, money has 2 meanings. The official peso, the one the government swears by, traded in banks, printed by the billions, and worth whatever the state claims it is. And the blue dollar, the one everyone actually uses, the real market price of trust. Every Argentine knows both by heart. In a Buenos Aires cafe, you'll see 2 prices on the chalkboard. One in pesos, one quietly converted in dollars. Everyone pretends the system functions, everyone knows it doesn't. Inflation isn't a shock anymore. It's a climate. In 2024, it passed 140% and it hasn't slowed since. Prices change weekly. Rent contracts are pegged to the dollar. People buy groceries in bulk because they know next week's bread will cost more. Salaries devalue before they hit the account. A family's savings can vanish between paydays. And still, life continues. Weddings, birthdays, football matches. Argentines have learned to dance with chaos to turn crisis into rhythm. They don't ask for stability anymore. They ask for predictability in instability. This is an economy that no longer trusts itself. Banks are avoided, dollars are hoarded. Real estate, cars, and even cattle are used as savings accounts. The financial system exists in theory. The real economy operates in survival mode. There's an entire underground network of cuevas, informal currency exchanges hidden behind convenience stores and offices where locals trade pesos for dollars at the blue market rate. Everyone knows them, even the police. It's an open secret, a coping mechanism for a population that no longer believes in the official price of anything.